legend on the move. Agnes Boyegiu is better known all over the world as Mother Teresa of Calcutta. The 85-year-old is getting increasingly frail. Born in Albania and tenderly called Gonja, Little Blossom, by her parents, she was probably the last living legend of the closing years of the 20th century. People gather wherever she appears, hoping to have the chance of touching this living saint. In 1946, Maria Theresa left the Sisters of Loreto order to follow her own calling. She caused a revolution in the church with her missionaries of charity.
We mean that Jesus said, whatever you do to them least, you did it to me. I was sick and in prison and you visited me. I was sick. He says, no. I was hungry, I was naked. What we are doing, that's the beautiful part of our society, of our vocation. We have given the Blessed Sacrament and we have given the pool, 24 hours.
Well, the second miracle really began about 8 years ago, in 2008, 7 years ago now, I believe. In fact, it was December the 9th when the event happened. It involved a 42-year-old man from Santos in Brazil who developed a very serious viral brain infection. He went into a coma. There wasn't any hope for him. He was in surgery. He was in the operating room. The doctor went in to begin the process, the surgery, trying to reverse the situation. He had not been responding to any treatments. When the doctor found the patient, he was sitting up, and the patient simply said, "What am I doing here? What's all this about?" And this is 7 years ago, so careful medical investigations, what they used to call the devil's advocate, all of the medical team. And many of the members of the medical team are not necessarily people with faith. They're experts in their field. And the Vatican takes this process extremely seriously. And 7 years later, in September of 2015, the Council of Cardinals met for the Congregation of Saints and said there is no way to explain the reversal, the disappearance of traces of this viral brain disease. The man has been healed. Interestingly to note, when the man was very sick and when he was in surgery, his wife gathered together a whole group of friends to pray for the intercession of Blessed Mother Teresa. And the result is that Mother Teresa is going to be proclaimed a saint in 2016.
So it's really about relying on the accounts of witnesses, and a lot of people, including people who are not religious, have to be able to say, look, we cannot explain this healing, we don't know how it happened.
That's exactly it. Some of the most important people on that team for the Congregation of Saints are precisely those who don't necessarily have faith or are Catholics, but they are outstanding doctors. I know of a wonderful doctor, a woman doctor here at the university in Kingston, Ontario, who's not a Catholic. She's an expert, a professor of medicine, and she's often consulted for these very complex cases. What I find very moving in dealing with some of these doctors is after doing all of the scientific analysis and the research, they come to the point of saying there is no other way to explain this. It's that inexplicable response that they give, which then causes the cardinals to say, let's take this case very seriously. One could say that she was on a speed track, if you will. Even in the process, she died in 2003, and at the time, Pope John Paul II waived the initial 5-year waiting period. And how do you explain that? Well, there's a couple reasons. You are absolutely right in saying for some it takes centuries and decades and whatever. We're living in an age right now where the stories of these people are not hidden, they're not prevented. Mother Teresa was a world figure on the world stage. The world spoke about her. There was almost a public acclamation at the time of her death that this woman is holy. But with Mother Teresa, her works of charity, the way that she lived her prophetic life, she bonded and connected with people. There was an expectation, there was an acclamation from the whole world and an expectation that the church formally recognized her. And she was able to reach out to people far beyond the Catholic faith. She went into war zones. The pictures of her in war-torn Lebanon. She went into places where there was great hostility. She walked in the midst of warring factions. She united people. This tiny, poor woman, she was no beauty queen or princess. You know, it's interesting, at the time of her death, was very closely related to Princess Diana's death. In fact, the day after Mother Teresa died, that particular day, Mother Teresa was supposed to lead a prayer service for her friend, Princess Diana. Mother Teresa, simple, poor, small, a tiny woman. I knew her. I was with her.
You knew
and yet
her.
She spoke and she touched and she, oh yeah, I was with her. It was an incredible moment back in 1988, 1989. I taught her sisters. And I shall never forget seeing her sitting on the floor in the convent in a slum suburb of Rome, sitting there tiny, and I was speaking to her sisters. And she came in the sacristy after Mass. I was very privileged to meet her. And I said, how do you do this? And she stuck her hand up in my face, 5 fingers, and she said, 5. You did it to me. And she repeated those words very often, which of course are words of Jesus from Matthew's Gospel. When did you see me hungry and thirsty and naked and poor? Whenever you did this to the least of my brothers and sisters, you did it to me.
We mean that Jesus said, whatever you do to them least, you did it to me.